and fear of Hashem, those feelings, which means I'm connecting to godliness, that can only come when there's bittul. If there's no bittul, then it's not going to lead to that. So he starts explaining how yeshus, which is the opposite of bittul, is represented by Amalek. That's what Amalek, this nation Amalek embodied the klipa of Yeshus. And Amalek, which embodied the klipa of Yeshus, was the first to attack us. So he said, just like chronologically, they were the first. So too spiritually, this negative character trait, this flaw of Yeshus, is the first, and it leads to all other negative character traits. And he starts explaining how. First of all, explains that Yeshus, a person who is a Yesh, which means a person who has this good morning, Leah. A person who has an excessive sense of self, focus on self-awareness. In other words, not in the normal way it's supposed to be, but just totally self-centered and self-focused, and everything revolves around themselves. They're always thinking of themselves. They're very important in their own eyes. And of course, we said yesterday, there are hundreds of different levels of to what extent, to what degree, but that's a general idea. That kind of person is someone who could never tolerate other people's success, because that takes away from their greatness. If someone else is also great, I'm not as great. And therefore, Molech went out to fight. They knew they're going to be beaten. They knew they're going to be destroyed. And nevertheless, they went out to fight just because they could not tolerate to see that the Yidden and godliness was exalted in the way it was. And that's one of the things about Amalek. Then he goes on to Amalek, that Amalek is someone that gets involved in Teva, which means in all sorts of materialistic passions and pleasures and lust in a way which is beyond control. Because when a person is a yesh, he can't accept there's something I can't have. If I want it, I have to get it. Why do I have to get it? That's because of the yeshes. It's like, a king, if he wants something, of course he has to get it. I'm the king. What about a person who's not a king? Well, what if he thinks he's a king? So he also has to get what he wants. In other words, because of the fact that a yesh is someone who feels very prominent in his own eyes, as a result of that, he also feels that he deserves everything and he's entitled to everything. And if he wants something, he has to have it. And what's wrong with that? So let's just start with the top of the line. I'm on page 6, the top line of the page. Not the top of the line, but the top of the page. He gave the example, just like a person who's a poor person, hardly has a meal to eat, and of course every day he's craving to have some food. He'll never have the cravings to have the delicacies of a king. That's like a total different world for him. He wants to just have something to eat. It won't even dawn on him to have that desire. It's not in his radar, so to speak. So too, Hashafal, a person who's humble in his own eyes, doesn't think himself as so prominent. He doesn't have that feeling that I have to have everything that I see. And if he does have a type of something, if he's attracted to something, he can easily discipline himself not to do it, because he doesn't have this feeling like there's no way that I can't have what I want. But the person who is arrogant, his desire for things are extreme, very intense. He won't let go until he fulfills his negative desire, whatever it is. Even though it's negative, but he can't come to terms with the fact that I want something and I won't get it. The kol kach yochalias take of avav, this desire could be so strong, so intense, with so much force, that it can even stumble over doing something which is prohibited. Now, before he's talking about a person allowing himself just to indulge in all sorts of physical pleasures. It's permissible, but the indulging in it, that's something which is not a good thing. And a person should train themselves to be in control, train themselves to, that I don't have to have everything I see. You know, the diet that's called the seafood diet. Mm-hmm. Whatever I see, any food I see, I eat. So I don't have to have everything that I see. But if a person is in that mode that whatever they want, every permissible thing they want, they have to have, what's wrong with it, besides that in itself is not good, that I'm not disciplined, the other part to that is what happens if from there I go to the next step. They have a strong desire for something which is treif, it's altogether not kosher. Now that I've sort of created this mode that I must have what I want, unfortunately, that's going to happen. Even if it's treif, he's going to do it. But if it's a person that doesn't want to eat treif, how's he going to do it? What will happen is his brain will produce a reason why in this case it's permissible. It's okay. How can it be okay? Leave it up to the brain. Brain is very resourceful, can think of anything you want, and it'll find an explanation according to Torah that this thing which is prohibited is actually permissible. Besides the fact, because he wants it so much, that has another effect on the brain, that he doesn't look at this as such a negative thing in the first place. In other words, really it's something negative, it's something which is really prohibited in the Torah, but because he wants it so much, so he just, in his mind, he decides not such a big deal. You know, there's a lot of things written about not to talk in shul during the Torah reading. And they give a mashal. The mashal is that a king sends a messenger. This is the way it used to be years ago. When a king wanted to give a message to the people, they would send a soldier or an officer. He would blow the bugle. Everybody would gather together in the marketplace. He would get up on a platform and he would say, I have a message from the king, and the king said this and this and this. Nobody would dare talking to each other while he's giving a message from the king. That's outright disrespectful. So when you're reading the Torah, basically it's really Hashem is giving us the Torah. He's speaking to us. Yet you find a lot of people that they're very light about it. They talk during the Torah reading. And if you ask them why they're doing it, I'm not being trade, just talking. I mean, big deal. That's speaking Lashon Hara. I'm just having a conversation. I just asked this person something, he gave me an answer, that's all. In other words, when I want to do something, suddenly I put it down. In my mind, I say to myself, it's not such a bad thing. It's not that terrible. It's not such a big deal. And he gives an example. Just like the idea of sheikhat. We know that the Torah says you're not allowed to take bribe. And if you take bribe, you become disqualified to be the judge of a certain case. Eina kavana, the Torah doesn't mean that if a person takes bribe, he will know, he knows that, for example, that this party, this person is actually liable to pay, but because I got the money, I'll lie and I'll tell him, I'll tell him that he's exempt from paying. That's not what we suspect. Even if he's an honest person and he wouldn't do something dishonest, what we suspect, what the Torah suspects, and that's why it's prohibited, because they become close, because he gave him money, that creates a certain closeness between the two people. This causes the mind, the brain, and the logic in the brain to sort of be inclined in a certain direction. And it moves away, it deviates from what's emes. Now it appears in my brain that this person is really okay, that he's really exempt, he's innocent. Even though in reality, If you would be pure logical, he would understand that this person has to pay. That's what we find in Gemara, that even if a person didn't take outright bribery, the famous story in Gemara, the Gemara has a list of stories, but they're all along the same lines. I'll just mention two of the stories. One story was that one of the Rabbanim was traveling from one place to another place by boat to be the Rav and to be one of the rabbis making a decision in a Din Torah. He came with a boat. When you get off a boat, the boat is shaky. Someone was standing there, stretched out a hand, held on to his hand, and he got onto the shore. And then the next day, they're in the room for the Bezdin. The three rabbis are sitting there, and some people who have to be judged walk in, and he takes a look at him and says, "You? Oh, I'm disqualified. I can't be the judge anymore." Why not? Because yesterday you stretched out your hand and you helped me off the boat. So are we suspecting one of the sages of Gemara that because he did something so small that he's gonna do something so corrupt and say the wrong judgment? Chas v'shalom. He didn't suspect himself either of that. What he did suspect was that once I got this favor from you, subconsciously, without me realizing it, it has an effect on the way I think. And if in my mind it's going to make sense to me that you're exempt, I don't know if it's really because it's pure objective logic or because the favor you did to me had an effect that my brain should lean in that direction. The other example the Gemara gives is even better. That there was a Rav that had something on, I think, on the shoulder of his coat. It was a feather or something, and the other person walked over and pushed it off. It should look good. And the next day he said, "I'm disqualified." I mean, in other words, a little thing that you do already disqualify. How much more so when a person has a taiva for something special, and he wants a lot of money, he's going to make a lot of money, going to lose a lot of money. There's no way that this could not have an effect on the way I think, that I could no longer trust my judgment. So the same applies in here. It's a toik of a ratzon. Because I have, if my ratzon, if my taiva would be mediocre, I want something. I can't say that I'm like on fire, like I'm all passionate about it. But if he has a strong, forceful will and desire for something, nidmaloi, then it appears to him, shem b'zeh yisad gadol. All of a sudden, it's not such a terrible thing. He looks at it like it's not a big deal. And then he can easily find, besides the fact that it's not a big deal in the first place, he can easily find some sort of a heras heter. Heras heter, I underline because it's a term. It means to find a heter means to find a way that, in this case, in my situation, it's okay, it's permissible. Sometimes it's the right thing to do because of a certain situation. Somebody's weak, somebody's not well, so the Rav will come along and find a heter that they don't have to fast on Yom Kippur or something else. But here we're talking that it's because I have a taiva, not because that I'm not well or something. I have a taiva and I want to eat this food. I look at it and I say, wow, how do I know if it's really kosher? There's a little problem. And suddenly, it doesn't matter because it's like this. Or sometimes people say, I heard from my grandmother's cousin that she heard from her brother-in-law's uncle that he thinks that it's kosher. So that's okay. Did you do the research? Did you really find out? No. People are saying that they probably know what they're talking about. So what causes a person to have such intense taiva? It's all a result of the arrogance. He thinks of himself as very prominent and he's a very important person. Because it is, he has a very strong desire for whatever he wants. He feels, I'm entitled to that and I really should get it. Or like I said before, he can't come to terms that I won't get what I want. And eventually he could stumble and even do something which it starts off with being too much invested and too much indulging in permissible things. But it ends up with doing things that are even asur. And certainly when it comes to things that are permissible, He does whatever he wants. There's no restraining whatsoever. But the truth is, even that's not okay. There's a pasuk in Chumash where it says Kaddish Atzmacha. No, it says in Chumash Kadishtem. You should sanctify yourself. And the Gemara asks, what does it mean sanctify yourself? Does it mean to do mitzvahs? We know already that you're supposed to do mitzvahs. What is the Torah adding when it says sanctify yourself? So the Gemara answers, Kaddish Atzmacha b'mutalach. Sanctify yourself with that which is permissible for you. According to some opinions, it's midaraisa. It's something which is prohibited from the Torah. Like the Alter Rebbe writes this in Tanya, Perek Chavtes. So this is showing how Yeshus and Gaiva could be the source for a person's downfall. I don't plan to give long speeches. I just want to give you a little bit of a perspective of what is going on, because I understand that it's all over the place and it became world news that some Bachram decided to break the walls in 770 and all sorts of things that are going on. First of all, what's going on? And second of all, what does it mean for us? B'chlal, we don't have to engage in negative news, but it's relevant to us. You can't walk into 770. The building is locked. You can't dive in there. You can't do anything there. Funny that should happen on a day like today, which is the Rebbitzon's birthday. But basically, this is, first I want to say there's a very famous quote from the Tzemach Tzedek. It'll come in handy very often in life. And that is, what the damage a fool and a stupid person could cause with stupidity would be much worse than what a wicked person, could cause with his wickedness. I'll tell you why. When a wicked person does something evil, how evil would it be? How evil he is. If he's this evil, that's how much evil he'll do. If he's this evil, he'll do that much evil. A person who does something destructive because he has no brains, he can do 10 times worse because he's not intending to do it with evil, he's just doing it because of stupidity. That's one thing about what's going on. That, these boys wanted to, for years they're trying to make 770 bigger, there's not enough room, and everybody's suffering, and there are certain people that are holding it up. So they decided to take the law into their own hands. They're going to open up 770. Even though when you do construction in a building, you got to make sure that the building doesn't collapse. Chas v'shalom. You got to know what you're doing. So that's part of the stupidity, number one. The second part of the stupidity is that you don't do things like that without permission. There's a seder, there's an order, there's a balabas. I can't walk into your house and knock down the walls because I feel it's needed. 770 is a building that there are people which the Rebbe put in charge, and every shul has somebody in charge, and you can't have anybody who has an idea to go ahead and do it. He can say what he wants. There are people who give ideas all day long, how Israel should run their country, and how America should run their country, and how every country in the world should run, but you can't go ahead and do something. It doesn't belong to you to do it. The second thing happens to be this time of the year. Many years ago, Tov Shin Mem Zayin, 1986, 87, because it depends, it was before December, but it was the 30 days between Asara B'Teves and Asara B'Shvat. In other words, it was Asara B'Teves, and the Rebbe spoke publicly that now we have 30 days to get ready for Yud Shvat. In Gemara, it says that generally we prepare 30 days before a Yom Tov. Before Pesach, before Shavuos, we learn the halachas. So just like we have to learn the halachas of a Yom Tov 30 days in advance, we also have to prepare ourselves spiritually 30 days in advance. And that time the Rebbe came out with something very unusual. And it was a few months after the Rebbe established a Seilach Harav, that every single person should have a mashpia and not do things on their own without consulting mashpia. And the Rebbe said then so many things about it, that who knows how many things that happened that were so damaging that would never have happened if the person would have consulted his mashpia before they did it. And just to give an example, in the Sikha, which is printed and the Rabbi edited it, what about a person who's so amazing that he can't find someone greater than himself to be mashpia? One of the guys from here. He can't find somebody greater than himself to be his mashpia. What should he do? You know what the Rebbe's answer was? He should appoint somebody who's lower than himself. But how can he be a mashpia if he's lower than himself? The answer is there's a big mistake in what is a mashpia. Mashpia doesn't mean that he's the smartest person on the planet, the most perceptive person on the planet, the most chassidish person on the planet. Mashpia is a regular person, flesh and blood. But the mashpia, of course, there has to be somebody who's honest, who has knowledge, general knowledge. But the main quality of mashpia is that he's objective. The reason why, what does it say here about Sheikha? The reason why I can't trust my judgment is I'm either going to have a loss or I'm going to have a profit. It's going to make a difference in my life. So I can't judge whether I should do this or not do this because I'm so passionate about something. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but because I'm passionate, I'm not going to make the right judgment. So I talk to someone who's objective. He's not so passionate, could see things more clearly. And then he could guide me. In fact, that's why the Rebbe says, what about a mashpia that is a mashpia to many people? This person, for example, has 1,000 people consulting with him. He needs a mashpia. He gives advice to 1,000 people. And the answer is, all these people you can give advice to because it's not you. When it's you can't give yourself advice anymore. You're objective, you're not objective, and therefore you can't trust your judgment. So you have to turn to someone else, which is a mashpia. The Rebbe was so strong about it, he said that he wants in the next 30 days, every single person should write a report to their mashpia, what they added in Torah, in Tefillah, in Tzedakah, and they should do it 3 times during these 30 days. And the mashpia should send a report to the Rebbe. The Rebbe wanted to have every single report. And he added that any name that I'm not going to see, I'm taking it that this person is not following what I requested. There's not other reasons. It means that they're just not following what I said. Because there were people who had this thought, I don't need a mashpia, I'm this, I'm that, exactly like he describes here. What we see happening here is a group of boys who are very passionate. Maybe they have good intentions, but basically doing things on their own, not asking a Rav what I should do it, not asking a mashpia what I should do it, but just doing things that they feel is the right thing to do. And the destruction that they already brought on is beyond repair. When you do something which is called a Chil Hashem, you bring disgrace to Hashem's name, or you bring disgrace, in this case, to the Rebbe's name, you bring disgrace to the name of Lubavitch, you can't change that. This is something which is out there. What could you do? You can't have any control on you don't even know how many tens of hundreds of thousands or millions of people read this news, and it caused them to think negatively about Lubavitch, and some negatively about Mashiach, negatively about the Rebbe. All these things are beyond repair. You don't even know who you damaged. You don't even know what you did. So how can someone do this? And the answer is, number 1, stupid. Number 2, gaiva, arrogance. I don't need a mashpia. I'm so sure that what I'm doing is right, I don't have to ask a mashpia. So we'll make 770 bigger, and Rahman al-Islam, the damage was done. First of all, the place is closed down. The yeshiva doesn't even have where to learn. People don't have where to daven. So immediately you see it caused damage, not good. It reminds me of the story of this guy who was sleeping, and he had an elephant that he trained all his life who loved him. And while he's sleeping, there was a fly that kept bothering him, waking him up. And every time the fly came, the elephant waved his big foot and he chased the fly away. And in one moment, the elephant noticed that the fly parked on his owner's nose. And it's sitting there. Perfect opportunity. He picked up his big foot, his big legs, and he smashed the fly to pieces. Guess what else was smashed to pieces? He loved him so much, so he killed the fly so he can sleep well. Unfortunately, he went to sleep, which means that sometimes people try to do something good. Are you thinking about the ramifications? What are you doing? What are you doing? And the main thing is, when you ask somebody, how come you did it? You can't blame him for being stupid. The Eibishter created him, he's not smart. So he didn't think about the ramifications. But you can't excuse yourself, why didn't I ask someone before I did it? Why didn't I follow the Rebbe's instructions? I don't know what the answer to that is. I know what the answer is going to be. I have a mashpia who told me that it's okay. Who's mashpia? My friend. Who's his mashpia? Me. So we take care of each other. That's making a joke.
Him and he's supervising him. It's not unsupervised.
It's nothing, right? It's just making a joke out of something which never said. So I think this is a very strong message. What's happening, if anything, is the importance of a mashpia. Yeah. Yes.
I mean, the women's section is already taped off.
That's the
There was
women's.
a lot of them.
Now it's the whole shul, the whole building.
The entire building's
But is it
closed.
probably also for the women?
The entire shul is closed.
Wow.
They're fixing it. They had construction last night. I think.
Really?
People came last night. Hopefully we'll fix it. So sad.
Very sad, yeah. It's very sad because someone does something. As a result of that, it has an effect on everybody, even though it's just one person. In other words, we're also entitled to have our people that are not so normal. We're entitled to have that. We're just like everybody else. People think that, okay, this is Lubavitch, every single person walking down the street is perfect from head to toe. There are people that have Yetzaharas and people that are a little bit emotionally not so stable. And altogether, these are the kind of things that happen. But unfortunately, people don't look at that way, especially people who are looking to find fault will say, this is a result of learning Chassidus, and this is a result of believing in Mashiach. What's the connection? I don't know. This is a result of this, and this is a result of that. And that's very unfortunate. So the only thing I can say is we don't have to, and to choose a time to do this, when there's a war going on, when people are dying, Rahman al-Islam, where's your brains? What are you thinking? What's going on? There's no words. So I think that part of it is some of them are like not 100% stable, and some of them are just very arrogant. And I don't know who and what and when, but these are the two qualities that you need to do the things that were done: brainless and arrogance. So to say that we can learn from this to have brains, you can't do that. Either you have it or you don't. But to learn from this not to be arrogant and not to do things without asking mashpia before, that's a very powerful message. Especially when you do something that's affecting the public. You do something in your own personal life is one thing. You're doing something that's going to affect the whole entire public. You have to think 100 times before you do something like that. The Rabbi once said that when you speak publicly, so shir, you should look over first before what you're going to say. And the Rabbi brought a source somewhere in the Torah, which says that Moshe Rabbeinu, before he went to speak to the people, first he went over in his own mind what to say, and then he spoke. Even Moshe Rabbeinu. So we told the story with the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab, and I think with the previous Rebbe, were traveling. In those days, people had no idea who the Rebbe Rashab was. Pictures weren't like today. So maybe they knew the name, but no idea who he is. Came to the shul. No one knew who he was, but they just looked at this person. They saw this is somebody, not an ordinary person. He's some great person. You could see just on the way he carries himself on his face. And they decided to give him the most honorable aliyah, which is maftir. So before maftir, the Rebbe Rashab said, please give me just a few minutes, I'll be right back. He went to another room, and then he came back and said the maftir. So the Rebbe said, what did he do in the other room? He's going to say maftir publicly. He wanted to first say it to himself privately and then say it publicly. Now maftir, you're reading from inside. You're reading inside. Everything is there. The words are there, the vowels are there, and even the niggin of the trup, which is supposed to say with a certain tune, that's also written there. Where could you go wrong? But if you can speak publicly.
But we also learn about that speech is higher than Chokhmah, and that when you're speaking like new things like Chokhmah.
That's right, that's true. So speech is very, very important, definitely. But there's a difference between me speaking to my next door neighbor or my friend or speaking to a public, then it's a whole different level because I'm affecting the public.
Okay.
Rabbi Majeski,
Yeah.
who did the Rebbe like put in charge of 770 and like
Okay,
can
so-
you explain like why it was like holding up?
So this is the part that I'd like to add. I think we don't have to go there. You're not going to gain anything from going there and having the discussion and who's in charge, who's not in charge, who's really the boss. That's another side result of this whole thing, that everyone's going to be busy with that instead of learning, davening, and saying Tehillim. Like I said, what's shocking is it's a time of war, Rahman al-Islam. It's not just a war of words, it's a war. People, unfortunately, are falling every day. People are being injured every day. What I read, there's about 12,000 people today in Israel that are considered disabled because of the war. In other words, they don't count those numbers, but 12,000 people disabled, Rahman al-Islam. So we want this war to end as soon as possible. And you do that by learning, by davening, by saying Tehillim. So now the time will be spent with talking about them and this and that. That's also part of the Yitzhahara's scheme. So I think we have to not go there, try as much as you can not to go there. I know it's curious, but just to know one thing, we'll daven, we'll learn, we'll say Tehillim, and things will get better. And once things are good and Mashiach is here, we'll have that discussion. Who said something?
That's good.
Rabbi Majeski.
Yes.
But if 770 is like, yeah, I know it's like physical what happened, but like also spiritual, like 770 is better when you should go bed.
Right.
It's close now, and especially in time of war and like everything that's going on in the anti-Semitic, it's like has an effect on us also.
So I don't know what goes on spiritually. I do know that anything that's choshech has to lead to a bigger or. So hopefully, like everything else, this is a choshech, no question about it. It's darkness, and then it'll have to lead to a bigger light. That's all. That's all. Let's not, just like everything else, let's not get stuck in the darkness. If we're supposed to think positive about the war and think positive about those things, we surely should think positive here, and not get caught up in it. We have just a few minutes left. I just want to add, yesterday I mentioned that one of the things that it says in another mimer, that why Yeshus is like leads to all negative character traits. A person who's a Yesh, which is also part of what we're talking about, a person who's a Yesh is a person who denies that they have any faults. They don't recognize that they have a fault. When you tell them, what you're doing is wrong, they just won't accept it. One of the greatest, most important character traits is to recognize that there's something wrong. Why? Because no matter what it is that I'm doing wrong, no matter what flaw I have, there are remedies, there's things to do to overcome the Yitzhahara with this or with that. It's like Begashmias. There are a lot of medicines out there, but the first stage and the first step to be cured is to recognize that you're not well. Chas v'shalom, if a person is in denial. I remember I once had an uncle, he was getting older, and he fell in shul, and they brought him into the house. They know you should really go to a doctor, there's something wrong with your foot. Well, my foot and my shoes, I got these new shoes, they don't, okay. A week later, he falls again. We have to go to the doctor, look, it's the second time you fell. Now the floor in the shoe is not straight, that's why I fell. Third week, he fell the third time. In other words, Begashmis, if you don't recognize that there's something wrong, how are you going to get cured? If I'm in denial, how can I correct anything? A yesh is always in denial. I don't have anything wrong. And if someone points something out to you, again, you reduce it into nothing. Not a big deal. This is nothing. So that's number one, that a yesh is somebody who has that character trait, which in a way leads to all of the negative things, because they have nothing wrong, they have nothing to correct. The other thing we said, that yeshness also leads to depression. It seems strange, because I would think a yesh, somebody who thinks very highly of himself, very important in his own eyes, he should be very happy, because he thinks so highly of himself. But actually, it says in that mimer that, no, it does the opposite. Actually, that's a reason why a person would be down and depressed. And the key to simcha is actually humility. And because the clock reached 9:15, we'll have to continue tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
But you said yes, it's huge shit.
Yeah.
It's like I have, like.
No, yesh means I am.
I am, okay.
I am.
So I have an interesting question, because where I am like doing stuff on social media, a lot of people have already messaged me about this.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what do I do?
What is their message? Why? What's
I
their-
mean, people are just like, can you explain what's happening? It's like, no, I can't explain because these people are clueless. And like, they're wearing Yehudi yarmulkes, but clearly they don't respect the single thing that it does.
Right.
But like, it's just like, how do I? Because where I am a like quad representative online.
So I guess all you could say is it's a small group of aggressive young men who unfortunately, are doing things without just not following any of the rules because they're aggressive and they're arrogant. And you could say, listen, that's that now you know that everybody here in Chabad is human. We're not made out of different stuff. You're very welcome.
Yesterday, I remember,
It's like-